everybody. Welcome back to Crime Weekly. I'm Stephanie Harlow.
And I'm Derek Lavasser.
Today we are going into part 2 of the murder of Cynthia Hoffman. But before we dive in, I just want to, chat with you for a second, Derek, and catch up. It's been a week since we've recorded, and I mean we talk every day. But what's been going on for you? What have you noticed out there?
Well, I'm a big Twitter person. I don't tweet a ton, but I obviously am following the news and I'm watching it, and I'm hearing about the FedEx shooting today, where I believe it's up to 8 people have been killed. I don't know if there's any more. I think there's some others that are injured. And apparently the suspect, after killing these 8 individuals, he also killed himself. And initial reports, and take this with a grain of salt because the media is always trying to be first, right? The initial report is that he was a former employee and he went back, it was a retaliation thing, kills these individuals and then kills himself. So it's unfortunate. And as someone, as a father, as someone who is out there every day with my family, it's a FedEx store, today. We had the Walmart incident not too long ago where, you just never know. And it's scary because it can happen anywhere in the country at any moment.
But did you see this kid, though, the suspect? I think he's 19 years old. He looks like a little boy in his picture. Brandon Hole, 19-year-old Brandon Hole was last employed by FedEx in 2020.
Yeah, I haven't seen a picture of him, but it's an interesting situation because the reason why I like what we do is, yes, we're covering cases, but I also feel from, what people tell us in the comments and the emails we get that, people sometimes look to us for advice too, because we're covering these cases, but our goal is to give these victims the voice they deserve, to make sure everyone knows who they were and they're not just a victim, but also what we can take away from it, right? So that we can be more prepared for situations in our own lives. So when these hot topic issues like mass shootings and gun reform and all these different things come up, I do feel like an obligation to talk about it. And I do have my opinions on it. And this might be a little bit of a controversial take, but it's the answer that I'm taking, the advice that I'm taking for myself, so I can only pass along what I'm doing, and you decide whether it's right for you or not. And for me, I'm in a state where I'm allowed to carry concealed. So I had to go and get a license. I have a ton of firearms, but it's mainly because I don't hunt, but I enjoy the building of them. I enjoy collecting them. I think they're art in a way for me. You don't have to agree with me there, but from a safety perspective, when I go out with my family, and we're not doing a lot of going out right now because of COVID, but even before, I've always carried a firearm on me in a movie theater or something like that, because you just never know. And I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I know there's some gun reform stuff coming, and I assume it'll go through. But at the end of the day, from my experience, the guns that are on the streets are on the streets. And just take this one example, and I'm not generalizing because every case is different. But in this one situation, this kid, right, he's going into the situation where he's going to kill himself, right? He's going to kill himself. So he just wants to take people with him. And to think that this type of individual, and this is just like Newtown. I remember when I was on for the Newtown shooting, this individual is not going to care about your laws. This individual is not going to care about gun reform. If they already have the gun in their grandfather, and there's over 500,000 guns in our country already, which you may think that's a problem. You may be right, but that's the reality. Those individuals already have the guns. So regardless of what happens from this point forward, if they banned all guns in this country, they're already out there. So when you're out at a movie theater or you're at a shopping center and you're with your family, there's no law, there's no gun reform change, there's no police officer, unless they're right there, that's going to save you or your family. It's only going to be you. And for me, it's not a guarantee, but I'd rather be in a position where I can at least try. And you know that saying, you don't take a knife to a gunfight. So if someone has a gun, I want to have one too. So I at least have the opportunity to protect myself. So, depending on what you believe in, that would be my advice to you or anybody that I care about, because that's what I'm doing. But you got to decide what's right for you and your family.
Yeah, I'm not super worried about the people out there who have guns that they acquired legally. And I think that's where the debate kind of loses traction, is there's so many guns out there that aren't obtained legally. And typically, and I know not in every scenario, obviously, and I'm not making a generalization here, but typically when these crimes are committed, they're not committed with guns that are obtained legally. And, if I was in a position like that and somebody was, going to kill themselves and they're thinking in their heads, well, I want to take out everybody I can in the process, I would want somebody like you there with a gun, to be completely honest. People who are responsible. And I think the majority, or at least a good percentage of people, gun owners in this country, are responsible gun owners. And if you're raised in a family that has guns, you're taught from a very young age to be a responsible gun owner and a responsible gun user. But that's the difference. It does need to be something that's taught and trained, just like anything else. A car can be incredibly dangerous. Anything, a knife can be incredibly dangerous. That's why you teach kids from a young age, like, be careful with this knife. If you're cutting carrots, don't cut yourself. When you're in a car, you have to wear a seatbelt. Don't drink and drive, things like that. We have to train people from a very young age. But I personally am a gun owner for my protection, not because I'm trying to hurt anybody, not because I like hunting, because I would never kill an animal. Nothing could ever make me take an animal's life or another human being's life. I don't want to take anyone's life, but I do want to protect myself. And I think you and I are both in the same position where we do have an immersion in these true crime cases that we cover, and we know how dangerous the world can be, and we know how scary it is out there. And we know that the bad guys are usually armed better than we are. So I do encourage people to be responsible gun owners. Just recently in my area where I live, Rochester, New York, last week or a couple weeks ago, there was an enormous amount of carjackings. And in a few of them, the person got shot. And it sort of bothers me because the police tell you, like, if you're in this situation and somebody comes up to you and says, oh, give me your car, or give me your purse, or give me your jewelry, you're supposed to just say, okay, and hand it all over. But I think if these criminals were aware that there's a responsibly armed population out there, there would be less of them who would just go up to you and try to take your car or try to mug you. And I think that's where we have a big disconnect, that guns are considered really, really bad. But if you put gun regulations on this country, it's going to take the guns out of the hands of responsible people, but they're going to keep them in the hands of the people who aren't getting them through responsible and legal means. So you're going to be, not protected. And the person who might want to take something from you, like your car or your life, they will be armed. So I know there's countries who have very strict gun laws, and over time they've managed to get the guns off the streets. Therefore, you're not worried about maybe the criminals having them. But in some countries, this really hasn't been as successful, because I hear a lot of people who live in those countries say, well, we're not allowed to have guns, but the criminals still do. So it's definitely a slippery slope, and it's a very, very tough conversation. But I do encourage you that if you own a gun or you want to own a gun, just be very responsible with it. There is a responsible way to handle this, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with being armed and being able to protect yourself and your family, and if you're in a public place, those around you.
Yeah, it's, again, we know we're just literally scratching the surface of a deeper issue, and I'm sure there's people listening and they have a million comments they're making right now, and I'm sure we'll hear them, and it's a bigger conversation for a bigger day, but we can just end it on, our thoughts are with the families, for everyone involved with the FedEx, shooting and every other shooting, because, it's not going to bring them back regardless of what happens, and we're thinking of them. And, I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anybody does. And the reality is there might not be a perfect answer. So we just got to keep rolling with it, and hopefully something changes where we do start to see some progress.
I think that's absolutely the reality, that there is no perfect answer, unfortunately. Yeah.
Scary, but
that's the reality with a lot of things, right?
Yes.
We have to do our best.
Yep, absolutely. But again, thoughts are with everyone, and just stay safe out there. Be vigilant. Be aware of your surroundings. And if you feel that you can get the training and you feel like you can be safe enough, that would be my advice. But anyone who doesn't agree with that, I completely respect it. It's your choice.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I will be armed in my house. I don't take the gun out. Because I don't
Thank God for that.
Yeah, no, I don't have a concealed carry permit. I live in New York, so it's very tough to get one. But I promise you that I am a person, and I think there's a lot of them out there like me, who, if I did have a concealed carry permit, and if I did bring my gun out into, the real world, the public, nobody would be in danger from that.
No.
But nobody would mess with me, okay?
I won't mess with you now. But yeah, I just wanted to bring it up because it's something where we're recording these episodes and we're talking about cases that have been adjudicated in some cases, or cases that are older. And these are issues that are going on around us, and we're not oblivious to them. We know there's a lot of things we could talk about. Police involved shootings. There's a lot. That's not really what this is. Maybe in the future we have something else, like another form on this platform or a different platform where we discuss things like that more often. But again, it was just something that I was thinking about, and I wanted to touch upon it. But I know we're here for Cece today.
We are here for Cece, and when we left off in part 1, I sort of alluded to the fact that there was text messages that were exchanged between Denali Bremer and Darren Miller. And these are the two, I would say, there's roughly 5 people who are involved in what happened to Cece. But these two, I would say, are the main actors. They're the main people. And I have text messages from I believe it's like a warrant or an affidavit of some kind.
Yeah. And before you get into it, just for anybody, again, this is part 2 of Cynthia Hoffman. So if you haven't watched part 1 yet or listened to part 1, you should go do that. But if you haven't and you're just picking up from here, we're talking about 19-year-old Cynthia Hoffman. She was killed on June 2nd, 2019. And the two main individuals, there was 3 main individuals in my opinion, but the 2 main individuals that were there when this occurred were Denali Bremer and Caden McIntosh, but also the person that you're talking about who wasn't there, Darren Miller. So they brutally murdered this girl, and on top of doing that, Denali was sending Snapchat videos to Darren because he was in another state, but he was basically directing them as to what to do with her before, during, and after the murder. So it's a really horrific case.
Because he was pretending to be a millionaire from Kansas, yes. I believe, right? He was pretending to be Tyler from Kansas, a millionaire, and he was going to pay Denali, I believe it was $9 million to rape and murder somebody. She and her merry band of psychopaths chose Cynthia Hoffman. They are the ones who chose her. They are the ones who, actually carried this out. But he was the one who basically, I guess, swung the carrot in front of them.
Yeah, and as you were just alluding to, the text messages. So the good news is these knuckleheads were caught, all of them, including Darren, who was in another state. And they're in prison right now. They're awaiting trial. And what Stephanie was just speaking about was they're currently in the discovery process. And the discovery process is basically the exchanging of evidence. So the prosecution has evidence that they have to hand over to the defense team. And in this case, I learned that it's actually public defenders. But they have to hand it over to them to give them an opportunity to prepare a defense. And so that's the stage we're in right now. But Stephanie had some access to some documents where they actually have a transcription of some of the text messages that were exchanged between Darren and Denali. And I haven't heard them yet, so I'm going to be hearing them for the first time with you guys. Not really looking forward to it, but Stephanie wanted to get my genuine reaction to them, and so I've refrained from reading them. But either way, I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I really want everybody, and I said this at the end of part 1, but I want everybody to understand that at this time, it seemed like Denali Bremer was being painted almost as another victim. They were reporting it in the news that she had been catfished, air quotes for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, that she had been catfished. And so she had been almost tricked into doing this. And I just find that completely abhorrent. Like, I can't understand why any newspaper would write that. It doesn't matter if you thought you were talking to somebody else. So it doesn't matter if you knew the person's real name. He asked you to commit murder. You murdered your friend or a person who considered you her best friend. And it doesn't matter if you knew his real name or the real state he lived in or his real motives. It doesn't really matter to me. So she wasn't catfished. But I wanted you to...
And it's misleading, right?
It's very misleading.
Because you look at it and it does, like you said, it looks like she was a victim in any way, shape, or form. This is what I'll say. You can compartmentalize it. She was a victim of being catfished in the sense she thought she was talking to someone different. Nobody tricked her into killing
No.
her supposed best friend.
Thank you.
She was there. She was there with Caden and made the decision to kill Cece for the gratification of this person she thought she was speaking to. But nobody forced her hand. Nobody made her bring the gun. Nobody coerced her into or basically threatened her into doing it that was physically present and could actually carry out any type of threat to her. She made the decision herself. Yeah, she was bamboozled by this guy into thinking he was somebody different and he had money, but that's just because there was an incentive for her money monetarily.
And as you said,
yeah,
as you said in part one, she didn't even get a down payment. So
no,
there's got to be a part of her that's wondering, like, is this dude for real? Like, how many millionaires are out there trolling the internet trying to get somebody to kill somebody else? Like, there had to have been a pretty big part of her that said, this probably is not real. But it didn't matter, and she went through it anyways. And what I want you to do when you're listening to the text messages that I'm reading, ask yourself, how much of a victim does Denalis sound like? How does she sound? Does she sound like she's enjoying it? Does she sound like she's into it? Does she sound like she's just completely in fear for her life? Does she sound like she's being blackmailed? Does she sound upset? What does she sound like? And then let us know in the comments on YouTube, or let us know on our website, or let us know, on social media what you think she sounded like. And we're obviously going to tell you what we think she sounded like. So what I have here is, it's an affidavit in support of criminal complaint. And this is actually an FBI agent, a special agent with the FBI. And she says that she's investigated on a number of violations of United States Code. She's assigned to the Violent Crime Squad in the FBI Anchorage field office, and she's specifically assigned to work violent crimes against children, including but not limited to internet crimes against children, online enticement of children, child pornography possession and distribution, and commercial sexual exploitation of children. And I would say that this case definitely falls into her purview. So I'm going to the text message conversation. I just want to give a heads up, if you guys have children in the car, if you have children around you, if there's young ears around, either pause this and listen at a different time, or put some headphones on, because this is not appropriate for them. I also want to remind you that in this text message conversation, there's going to be mention of minor victim 1 and minor victim 2. Minor victim 1 was 8 or 9 years old. Minor victim 2 was 15 years old. Now, that means that what Denali did on Darren Schillmiller's instruction was sexually assault 2 underage girls who were, 8 or 9 years old and 15 years old. And there's a lot of discussion about specifically minor victim 2, who is the 15-year-old in this specific text exchange. So Denali says to Darren, quote, "So I do stuff to minor victim 2, then we rape her later tonight too? Question mark, end quote. And Darren responds, yeah. And then he goes on to say, quote, "So are you going to the 14-year-old? Denali responds, he. Yeah, I'm going to her right now. Okay, found a place to do it. Gonna go buy weed first. I want to get her high for it so she doesn't fight me. I love you." And then Tyler responds, or Darren, he responds, "I love you too. Have lots of coming to do. I mean with her. I want to come till I bleed to her and you." And then he goes on to say, quote, "When we start, just send pics, understand?" And Denali Bremer goes on to respond to him, quote, "Yes, I love you. And soon we can rape minor victim 2 together. She's gonna be asleep for it. Her choice. Is that okay?" And Darren Schillmiller responds, "Okay, she's passed the fuck out." And Denali Bremer responds, quote, "I can fuck her when she's asleep." Tyler responds, "You do what I say." And Tyler is Darren Schillmiller. But in this affidavit, he's referred to as Tyler because that is how apparently Denali referred to him. Denali responds, yes. So Tyler says, "You do what I say?" Denali responds, yes. Tyler then says, quote, "Show me her belly and pants laying flat lay, her flat on video. Hurry. She's only 14. Denali responds, "Yeah, she's 14. Tyler says, "Force her, tie her up if you have to." Denali responds, "Okay." Tyler, a.k.a. Darren Schillmiller, responds, quote, "Do the video." Denali responds, okay. It says in here, the next text is a video sent from Denali Bremer to Tyler, Darren Miller, in which Bremer puts her hand down minor victim 2's jeans. It's not clear from the video if the hand reached under minor victim 2's underwear. Tyler says, quote, it's cute, do hotter videos, hold her down and stuff. Fight her, impress me, spam me 20 pictures, surprise me, pics of her in underwear. We need to fuck her butthole later, find some toys, ha ha, end quote. At this point in the conversation, it appears as if minor victim 2 takes Denali's phone and begins texting with Tyler, aka Darren Miller. A picture of Denali Bremer shows her to be asleep on the bed while minor victim 2 texts with Tyler, aka Darren Miller. The conversation continued between Tyler and minor victim 2. Tyler says, quote, well, I'ma have Angel actually rape you today full force. I kinda want to see a dick in you, end quote. So Angel is Denali Bremer. It seems to be her nickname. It's what Darren Miller referred to her as. It's what Caden McIntosh referred to her as. And Tyler's saying that he's going to have Angel actually rape this 15-year-old girl full force today. And he wants to see a dick in her. And this minor victim, number 2, the 15-year-old girl, she responds, okay. And Tyler says, but who can dick you? And this minor victim 2, she responds, maybe you can? And Tyler says, tell you what. I think he means tell you what. I don't know if I told Angel, but I also have 50 million. I'm willing to give you 15 mil. And minor victim responds, I have to leave before 2. And Tyler responds, guess what? You can't leave. I told you, Angel, to tie you up if I have to. You gonna play the fuck out of her pussy, understand, and ass. And minor victim responds, yes, I understand. So Tyler says, make it wet, do a nice video, send a lot of videos. And the next text is a video of minor 2 removing Bremer's underwear and digitally penetrating Bremer, and that means with her fingers, for those of you who do not know. At this point, it appears as if Bremer takes control of the text messages again, and Tyler says to her, quote, take her socks off. I need child porn. Fully rape her. I will make sure you see me today. Make it look like role play. You know what I mean. Like a porn movie. Remove panties on video and sword her legs. I think he means spread her legs. Bremer sends Tyler 2 videos. In the first video, Bremer removes minor victim 2's underwear and minor victim 2's vagina is visible. In the second video, sent immediately after the first, minor victim 2's legs are spread and her vagina is again visible. And then Tyler says, quote, I wish I never made a deal with you in the first place. We can meet, but once I see a cop, I'm telling him or her that I made you rape people and killed Cece. I don't even deserve you. I still want kids, but I can't because I have a child porn fetish I'm trying to get over. I have a rape fetish I want to get over, so I can never get help or be in a holly relationship, end quote. I believe he means healthy relationship. So, okay, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, and I think I want a second to process it. I have some initial thoughts. Take a second to collect myself because that's tough to hear. Let's take a quick break and we'll get right into it. So we're back and Stephanie just got done reading some really horrific text messages. And I have a few takeaways, and by no means am I a psychologist, but to start off with some of the questions that you posed before you read them, you know, as far as you wanting us to kind of think about, do I feel like Denali was doing this against her will? No, I don't. I feel like she was enjoying the whole situation. I definitely think she was falling for this person that she thought she was speaking to, and you can maybe make an argument that she was doing it because she wanted to please him, but the reality is she was the one doing it, and based on those text messages, it seemed like she was really enjoying it. There was it seemed like it was something that was gratifying her as well sexually. She may have been just saying that to gratify him, but regardless, the way you read it right there, that's not what it sounds like. And as far as Darren's concerned, might as well just say he's a scumbag. I don't have any other way to say it. He really is like the worst of the worst, and he's not only for what he gets off on, but just the way he talks and the way he's manipulating these young girls, including Denali. You know what I mean? Including Denali. The way he phrases things, you know, it's like a lot of these serial killers and people you hear about where they're able to coerce younger minds, people who are underdeveloped minds, and the way he phrases things, and then how graphic he is with these young girls, especially the 15-year-old. He's on the phone, the way he's talking to her. I mean, we talked about this a little bit last week. You know, there's no coming back from this guy. He's going to be a waste of space in prison. There's only one outcome I think should come from this. I don't know if that will be the case, but I think that his life should be ended. It's that simple. There's no rehabilitating that man. I know that he says at the end of the text message, you know, oh, I'm never going to be in a healthy relationship. He wants to try to play the victim, but the reality is all his text messages prior to that completely contradict it. And the only reason he was doing that is because he didn't feel like he was getting what he wanted. That's all. He was pouting. He was pulling. He had a tantrum, and that's when he was blackmailing her, saying he was going to tell the police. He's all over the place. He's a psychopath, and there's no reason anyone like that should be on this earth.
Well,
I'm sorry. It's just the way I feel.
Like you said you think, from the text, and I agree with you. It seems like Denali has fallen for this person. What does that say about Denali, that she would fall for somebody like this? That this would be something that was not only attractive to you, but that you would say to this man in this short amount of time in this text exchange that she loved him twice.
Yes.
Yeah. And
he knew that. He knew what he had. He knew what he had in her, and he was playing it up.
But did she know what she had in him, which was nothing? Okay, you haven't met this person. You don't know who he is. All you do know about him is that, as he said in his own words, he has a child porn fetish and a rape fetish. And this is what you know of this person. And this is who you say, oh, I love this person. So to me, yes, he's a scumbag, no question. I mean, that's not up for debate. But there is, there's some debate out there as to whether or not Denali was a victim or a perpetrator. And I think that without a doubt, she's a perpetrator. She knew what he wanted. She knew he made her kill somebody, or he told her to kill somebody. He was going to pay her money to kill somebody. And now he wants her to sexually assault children. And she seems to be going along with it just fine. Yeah, I'm going to find weeds so I can get her high so she doesn't fight me. And then, we're going to rape her and she's going to be asleep for it, her choice. And that brings me right into the minor victim 2 scenario. And there may be people out there who say, well, this minor victim 2, this 14 or 15-year-old child seems to be down for it. No, this child is not down for it. This child has been manipulated by this asshole, Denali Bremer, and this other asshole, Tyler, a.k.a. Darren Miller, a.k.a. the creepiest pervert on the face of the earth, and he's offering her money. Now, we're talking about a 14 or 15-year-old child that, may be not financially well off. They may be in a bad money situation at home. They may be living...
She might be under the influence at that point as well.
They also may be living in poverty, and when you offer somebody who is in... And this is, if you think about Jeffrey Epstein, okay? You think about Jeffrey Epstein and how he preyed on his victims. He went from his fancy mansion in, Palm Beach to, I think it was West Palm Beach, where there's definitely an economic disparity, and he recruited his victims from there because he knew they were in a bad economic situation, and that if he offered them money, they would do what he wanted. That's manipulation. That's awful. Not only that, but this is a child. She says at some point, I have to be home by 2 because she's a child, because her parents said she's got to be home by 2. And he's like, oh, no, you're not going to be home by 2. I told Denali to tie you up if she had to. So this child has been roped into this by Denali and by Darren, but she's also got, her boundaries where she's like, I got to be home by 2 or my parents are going to be upset. And he's like, no, you know what? I'm going to give you $15 million. And she's like, okay. She's not down for this. And like you said, Denali says she's going to buy her weed so that she's, her inhibitions are down so she doesn't fight her. And that looks like it's exactly what happened.
And again, what we're talking about here is a 14 or 15-year-old having a conversation with a 21-year-old. Yeah, he's not like an old man, but the brain development at that point is significant between 14 and 21. So this guy knows what he's doing, knows what he's saying, and he's taking advantage of the situation because he knows he has a teenager who really just wants to be liked, right? just wants to be part of the crew, the older crew.
Wants money.
Wants money for sure. And she's got this, she might be looking up to Denali as like this cool, teenage girl who she wants to be like. And then she has this older man on the phone, and, and she wants to have him to like her too. She wants to be part of the crowd. And yeah, they're 100% manipulating her. And the saddest part about all of it is, as much as we hate the guy, Darren knows exactly what he's doing. He's got this tool, this instrument in basically Denali, who's basically carrying out his thoughts, right? He can't physically do it, but he's manipulated this girl to the point where she will do whatever he pleases just to
I don't like
appease
that
him.
manipulate. I don't think he's manipulated her.
He's manipulative, but I hear you, because even when I said it, it's like, it's tough, but at the end of the day, she's carrying out the actions, and it does feel like she likes it. But do you think it's fair to say at this point, based on her saying she loves him and him not saying it back, like he knows that she's partially, maybe if it's small, doing this because she thinks she's in love with the guy, right? Is that fair to say?
I don't care. I don't care.
I don't care either.
I don't care if she thinks she's in love with him. I don't care if he thinks that she's in love with him. Why would she be in love with him? And besides that, the worst part for me is this Darren offers this child $15 million, and Denali's over here just killed somebody for him. She hasn't seen a cent. She knows Darren don't have no money, and Darren's not going to give this child $15 million, and she allows this to go on anyways. So no, I don't think she was manipulated. I think she saw darkness and evil in another human being, and a darkness and an evil that matched the darkness and evil inside of her. And she said, this is my man. This is my man. This is what I think. But you don't have to, I'm sure you agree. But I mean, out there, if you guys think she's a victim, you can think she's a victim. But I do not.
I don't think she's a victim. This is what I'll say. And then we can debate it all day. What I will say, just trying to be objective about it from my perspective. And again, we don't agree on everything. That's why people like this, right? They like seeing us not agree on it. But if I'm looking at this from an outside perspective, I'm looking at Darren. He sees this, what appears to be someone who doesn't have a lot of money, someone who clearly has, likes him. We don't know what other conversations they've had leading up to this, what he's told her, what he's promised her other than money. Like, hey, we're going to be together at some point. I love you too. And I think he probably was playing up the relationship card with her in order to get her to do certain things for him. And technically that is manipulation. If you're using something to convince someone to do something, you're manipulating them. That's the definition of it.
Yes, I agree with your definition. I don't agree that that's what happened here. In the last text, This dude literally says, I can't ever be in a healthy relationship. And I'm sure this wasn't the first time he said this to her.
But that was after she had already killed Cece.
Yeah, but I'm sure he said that to her before. It's not like this is the first time he's confessed he has a problem and he can't be in a healthy relationship, and he's just got this horrible illness and this sickness where he just wants to rape children and he just can't help himself. She knew that shit. He's been telling her, what did she think? They were going to get married, have a couple of dogs, 3 kids, a nice little townhome in San Francisco. What did she think was going to happen? Did she think that she was ever going to have a normal life? No. She did not think she was going to have a normal life with this man. She thought she was going to have a life of debauchery where they would just go around victimizing other people and get off on it. And you know what I think of when I see these two individuals? I think of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. And if nobody knows what I'm talking about, I have a multi-part series on these two evil individuals on YouTube. They're from Canada. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka went on together as a couple to rape, torture, and murder several young women, including Karla's own little sister. Okay? So some people are just evil. And this bitch, Karla, okay? She acted like a victim too. That woman is out walking around now. That woman is out walking around after she drugged her sister to the point where she died and then watched her boyfriend rape her sister. This woman is out there taking her kids to school right now. All right? Unacceptable. So we know
the question we have, right? For this week?
What is it?
So that's our question for this week for sure. We had the one a couple of weeks ago was Herb was a customer, right? And I mean, people went off on that, right? So that's the question to you guys. Are you with me or are you with Stephanie? And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. What I'm saying is I think Denali is the scum of the earth, and at the end of the day, nobody forced her hand to do what she did. But I do think Darren used some powers of manipulation to get her on that track. Stephanie disagrees. And so we want to hear from you guys. What do you think? Do you think that, and stop me if I'm wrong, if I'm understanding you correctly, Stephanie, Darren is pure evil, and essentially what you're saying is Denali is pure evil as well, and they just happen to find each other.
Yep.
Right? Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's where Stephanie's at, and it's a compelling argument. I'm saying
it's
that
not an argument; it's a fact. Okay, this woman, this woman is vile.
No, she's pure evil. I'm saying that I think Darren
So you
found
admit
her.
I'm right. You just said she's pure evil.
She is. Oh, yes. No, I agree with you. She's pure evil. No doubt about it. And I've said it in the first one. I'll say it in this one. Nobody made her do what she did. And I think there was part of her that really enjoyed it. So to your point, pure evil. All I'm saying is it sounds like Darren started this, where he basically might have proposed this idea to her, and she clearly was in for it. And I'm just saying that I think based on her saying, I love you twice, and she's probably saying it, previous occasions before CC, whatever, it doesn't appear that Tyler, I'm even calling it Tyler now too, Darren was in love with her. So if he knew he had no feelings for her, wasn't in love with her, was never planning on giving her the $9 million, was never probably even planning on meeting up with her, right? Because even the points where the 14 or 15-year-old said like, well, maybe you can, be that. He didn't acknowledge it and say, yeah, maybe I will be, because he knew he was never going anywhere near them. And so I'm just saying from that point perspective, he knew what they believed was going to happen. Money, possible sex down the road, a possible relationship with Denali. I think in his mind, he knew that was never going to be the case. And therefore he used that to convince Denali that there may be a future between them. Even though that was clearly not the case.
How did he convince her? You don't hear him say, I love you back to her. Wait, did he? No, he says, I love you too.
Okay, there you go. And I didn't even know that.
He follows that by saying, I have lots of coming to do. I mean with her. I'm sorry. Okay, your boyfriend tells you he loves you and then tells you he has lots of coming to do with a 15-year-old girl. Oh, yeah,
Listen,
that's true love. That's everything I've always wanted. When I was 9, I was sitting here thinking, screw the wedding and the dress and the cake. I just want a Darren Miller. That's who I want to ride away with me into the distance. No, this, I'm going to say it. Like attracts like, okay? You attract people to you that are like you. Because if it was a normal person who didn't have this darkness in their soul, the conversation would have been cut off from the get-go. The second he was like, I have a thing for children, or I have rape fantasies. Listen, I'm not going to judge people's sex lives. I don't think having rape fantasies is necessarily a terrible thing if it's done with healthy and consensual adults. But when you mix the I have a child porn fetish with I have rape fantasies, this is an issue. The second he said I need you to go kill someone, a normal person who had a moral compass, who knew the difference between right and wrong, would have been like, whoa, no way, this is way out of what I expected, and cut it off. Okay,
yeah, I'm out.
There's plenty of fish in the sea. You don't need to be talking with this creep on the internet. Period. She was into it. Good.
I agree. So that's the question, guys. Again, from my perspective, not saying at all Denali is a victim at all. She's not. Our question to you is, do you think Darren manipulated Denali in any way, shape, or form, or do you think that these were two like-minded individuals who just happened to find each other and decided to carry out something that they both wanted? That's the question,
listen,
right?
While you're contemplating, while you're contemplating that question, think about Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo. Think about Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. These are couples who Fred and Rosemary West. Okay, it's not like it doesn't happen. It happens. All right. So I'm going to go on.
Don't be stacking the deck. Don't be stacking the deck, Stephanie.
Think about them.
She's stacking the deck. Let's take a quick break and we'll come right back.
And I'm going to talk about Darren Miller now. Okay, because this guy's got a past. All right. Let me get my notes here. Darren
Do we really? I'm so sick of this guy already, but yes, we do have to talk about him because there's a lot more about him.
Sure is. So Darren Miller is a 2017 graduate from North Harrison High School. He lived in a single-story brick home with an older relative on nearly 2 acres of land in Salisbury, Indiana, which is a small rural farming community. Some former classmates of Darren's describe him as a shy young man who struggled in school but treated others well. He was more likely to be bullied than to be a bully. But one woman who attended middle school and high school with Darren said that although no one ever thought he would kill anybody, he did have a problem with child pornography. She said that he would bug her relentlessly for bikini photos, and he once tried to friend her on Facebook using a fake profile. It apparently was also well known around this town of just 600 people that Darren would ask, like, the local mothers for pictures of their children. And several people told KTUU in Alaska that Darren's affinity for images of young children was well known, an open secret that they just didn't recognize as a bigger problem, because it's not a big problem as it is, right? It's not a bigger problem or an enormous problem already that he likes to, look at child pornography. It's not a big problem that he's soliciting the local women to send him pictures of their children. That's not a big problem. It's going to be fine. It's just something small we don't have to worry about. And apparently a bunch of women have now come out saying that Darren messaged them using fake names like Austin and Dylan, and he asked them to send pictures of their children or pictures of them changing their babies' diapers. He allegedly asked one of these women, her name's Brittany Meeks. She dated Darren on and off during high school. I'm so sorry, Brittany Meeks, by the way. That must have been horrendous. And Brittany claims that Darren allegedly asked her to sexually assault her 4-month-old son and send him videos of this act. And apparently Brittany did not think that this was worth reporting. Brittany actually claims that she had experienced sexual violence from Darren in the past, and she said the reason she broke up with him is because he was trying to force her to do sexual things that she didn't want to do. Now, even though Darren has pretty much confessed to all of this and there's plenty of evidence to prove his involvement, he's decided to plead not guilty to both the murder charges and the federal pornography charges. But let's talk for a moment about the community of Salisbury, Indiana, and why they thought that this well-known secret of Darren Miller being interested in child pornography was just not something to be concerned about. What's your take?
Well, I mean, hindsight is 2020, so I'm not, condemning any of them. Although goes back to what you and I say all the time, which is if you see something, say something. If you hear something, you should say something. This is a situation where it's better to err on the side of caution. And if you have someone asking for pictures of you changing your child, that needs to be reported. That's simple.
Not even that. He asked Brittany to sexually assault her 4-month-old child and then send him videos of it. I mean,
well, that to me is like a no-brainer. That to me is a no-brainer. But I'm saying even something more subtle, right? It's something that if it's not a normal thing, you got to err on the side of caution. I will say, in this small town, maybe, again, I'm speculating, but maybe it's like a small town. Everyone knows everyone. And if you're going to accuse someone of something, you got to make sure that you're 100% accurate, because then you'll get, blackballed by the rest of the town. I'm not trying to justify. Exactly. I'm not trying to justify. I don't think there's any justification for it. I don't think either one of us are sitting here like, really, pegging down on the people who didn't say anything. Although if they would have, maybe this doesn't happen, what we're talking about tonight, right?
Exactly.
If they report it and they're diligent about it, maybe you and I aren't sitting here discussing the death of CC. And so from that lens, it really does frustrate me. I can see that it frustrates you. And that's why we keep telling you guys, in the world we live in today, when something like this happens, even if it's not as severe as the second situation where he asked her to molest her daughter, there's nothing wrong with calling the police and making them aware of a situation and asking to remain anonymous. And the police may not even reach out to this person right away. They may just start doing some research, maybe look into some, maybe they have another file or another complaint that came in from someone different about this same person. But if you don't report it, they won't know. So yes, I'm 100% on board with you, Stephanie. There's a real possibility that if they had done something or said something, we could have avoided everything that we're talking about, tonight and last week.
I spend a lot of my time trying to be fair. Because my initial reaction, like anybody else's, is to look for somebody to blame. This is a natural human reaction, I think, right? Something goes wrong, somebody loses their life, let's look for somebody to blame. And I try to avoid that because I don't think it's always productive. I'm out of patience with being fair and unbiased because I am so sick of this stuff happening. And then a big majority of the conversation is spent on trying to figure out, like, well, how much of a victim was the perpetrator? Now, there are some clear-cut cases where I believe that the perpetrator of certain crimes may be a victim in their own right. And I will admit that when it comes to light. When it crosses my desk, I'll admit it. But I am just out of patience with the depravity and the evilness that is existing in this world. And then people, they try to get out of it by, I was, not in my right mind. I have an illness. I'm a mental insanity. It's disrespectful to all of those people out there who have legitimate mental illnesses when these people kill others, commit these horrible acts of violence against others, when they just hurt people, and then they try to just get off by acting as if they were the victim. I'm out of patience for it. And I don't think anybody in this story is a victim besides Cece. And we need to start really handling these cases more in that way. Because if we spend all this time thinking about why did they do this? What was going through their heads? I mean, I enjoy that as much as the next, but Darren's telling us what's going through his head, right? We don't have to even question it. We don't have to even have a conversation about it, where in some cases we do, because the motive's not clear. The motive's clear here. There is no excuse. There's no mercy for these people. And I'm out of patience. I'm fed up. And my job here is to be a voice for those who don't have a voice any longer. And you know what? Denali and Darren and the rest of these psychopaths, sociopaths, evil people, they still have a voice. They can defend themselves until the cows come home. But Cece doesn't get that voice anymore. Okay? Her father doesn't have his daughter. Her siblings don't have their sister. She doesn't get a life, and they do. So I don't care. I don't want to be their voice in this specific situation. And on that note, let's get back to Denali for a moment, because she's
Wait,
not...
you didn't answer the question.
Oh, what was your question?
No, it's
Ask
your
it
question.
again.
I agree with everything you just said. I don't know how that relates to what
I'm just saying, like, I'm out of patience. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, am I being unfair? Because this is my natural reaction to be like, are you being too severe? Are you being too extreme? Like, are you not being fair? But I don't even have the mental capacity at this point, especially from the last couple of cases that I've personally covered myself on YouTube these past couple of weeks. Like, I do not any longer have the mental capacity, at least this month, to sit here and be like, oh, I got to worry about everyone and I have to be fair and I have to be unbiased. Like,
No,
I'm worried about the victims. I'm here for the victims, right? Yes.
We both are, for sure. And I agree with you. I guess the question originally was, as far as, Darren Schillmiller's hometown and these individuals not coming forward to what's your take on that? Why do you think that they didn't?
It's unacceptable. It's complacency. It's the status quo. And it really makes me wonder, what other individuals are running around Salisbury, Indiana, that you thought Darren Schillmiller wasn't a threat? Okay, what other kind of people do you have running around there that this guy seemed benign to you? That is my question to all of the community in Salisbury, Indiana. And I understand, okay? I'm gonna try to pull it back. I'm gonna try to be fair.
Yeah, you are going off.
I'm so over it. All right? I understand Brittany Meek said she had experienced sexual violence at his hands before, and so she's afraid. But you know what? You're not a teenager in high school anymore. Okay, you are a grown woman who has a child that this man just asked you to sexually assault and send pictures of this sexual assault to him, and you're going to let him continue to run around the neighborhood in the presence of other children because you're afraid. At some point, you have to step up. You have to take responsibility. You have to think about somebody else besides you, because you can have protection, okay? You can have protection. You can go to the police and you can say, listen, this guy, he said this to me. I'm worried about the kids of Salisbury, Indiana, but I'm also afraid of him. So can you please, make sure that I'm safe? And, once again, it's Salisbury, Indiana. This goes back to our initial opening conversation. Brittany, get yourself a gun And if Darren Miller steps foot inside your house, then you take care of this problem for the world. Period.
Don't do that. don't. I don't want you to go to jail, Brittany.
Why? Well, she wouldn't go to the jail if he came to her house to hurt her.
Oh, no, he didn't. But he was basically saying he wanted her to sexually assault her child.
She says she didn't shine a light on this because she had experienced what she called sexual violence at his hands before. Therefore, AKA, she's afraid that she might be hurt by him, right? So get your gun, Brittany. And if Darren Miller darks on your doorstep with the intent to harm you, then end him. Okay? Make it very easy. Take care of this problem for the rest of the people out there that he's going to potentially victimize in the future. But you are not a victim. You don't need to be a victim. Okay? You need to stand up for others who cannot stand up for themselves, like children. And this is the one place, and I think that this is a very hot button issue for me. I'm going to admit it. When it comes to crimes against children, I don't have tolerance. I don't have tolerance for people who look the other way. As an adult, it's your job to stand up and say, no, this is wrong. I will not tolerate it, and I will do anything I can to stop it. If nobody's going to speak for these children, if nobody's going to protect them, they cannot do it for themselves. But you can do it for yourself. So that's my opinion. I think it's absolutely disgusting. Like when I was doing the research and I was looking into this, I was like, oh, I can see that. Like, I can see how she'd be afraid. But then I'm sitting here now and I'm like, no, like I'm done. I'm out of patience. There's always something you can do besides do nothing, period. Both Caden McIntosh and Denali were arrested early on in the investigation. Caden was arrested on June 5th and Denali on June 7th. But apparently they let her out on bail after she was arrested because she missed her first court appearance. And that was on June 8th. And she'd also posted some stories to her friends on Snapchat. Now, in these stories, this must have been, I don't know if it was before the arrest or after, because I believe both Caden and Denali got out on bail at some point. Because in these Snapchat stories, you can see Caden McIntosh like walking around in the background. And Denali says, quote, I just want to thank everyone who's been there for me my whole life and these past few years and everything. I effed up. I know I did. If I could take back what I've done, I can't. I'm sorry, everybody. My family, my friends. I guess you will hear from me when you hear from me, but I won't be back for a long time. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to do it. End quote. You didn't mean to do it, but you did. And now you're sorry because you got caught. Because if you didn't get caught, you wouldn't be saying you were sorry, and you wouldn't be apologizing to everybody, and you wouldn't be, saying, I didn't mean to do it. You only are saying this because you got caught. But that's just my opinion.
Well, and now to your point, from what I was reading, if I was reading it correctly, they let him out on bail, right? Because obviously, there's due process. But because of this Snapchat video, the investigators took it as a confession. They took it as a confession. I believe they re-engaged her after this. From what I was reading.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, they re-engaged her after this because this was something that I don't think they had before they arrested her. When she goes on Snapchat and says this, and even the way you just read it, it sounds like a confession, right? So I think they re-engaged her, and she might have been brought back in after that, where her bail was revoked at that point because of this new information. Don't hold me to that, but that was the way I interpreted it.
I mean, it's possible, but why let her out on bail to begin with?
Well, that's a whole different conversation for a different day, right? But because bail is not a form of punishment. It's supposed to be to guarantee that the person shows back up for the next court date. Don't kill the messenger. Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Don't kill the messenger. But that's what bail is basically designed to do, to set something where as long as the person is not a flight risk, whatever they set will most likely guarantee that they'll appear in court when they're due. Clearly, it didn't work here, but that's the way it's designed. So, but then when she made this statement on Snapchat, it got back to investigators, and I think anybody listening to you speak right now would interpret that the same way. It sounds like she's basically admitting to what she's being accused of, and that she's going to be going away for it. So, I think they brought her back in after that. At minimum, I don't know if they rearrested her, but they at minimum brought her back in to question her about that.
And here's the thing: I appreciate that she's willing to say that she's sorry. That's hard. That's hard for some people to say that they're sorry. But she's not saying, I'm sorry to Cynthia's family. I'm sorry to my family, to my friends, to everybody who's been there for me. Not, I'm sorry to Cynthia's family because I've stolen somebody from your life forever. You'll never get the chance to say that you love her again. You'll never get the chance to celebrate another birthday. You'll never get a chance to hold her. You'll never get a chance to say goodbye. You had your last moments with Cece and you didn't even know it because of me. And I'm sorry for that. I would have respected that a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, and also, again, it goes back to, is she saying she's sorry because of what she did or sorry she got caught? And for me, I think facts are the deciding factor there. And when you think about the fact that after killing Cece, she wasn't sitting in her house somewhere contemplating what she had just done. She was out sexually assaulting 2 other children. And also, by the way, they, and I don't want to steal the thunder here, but there were thoughts of killing someone else.
Yes.
That was eventually, derailed. But that doesn't sound like a person that's feeling remorseful about what they did.
Those thoughts were derailed by her arrest.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So did she really feel? Is she really sorry about anything, or sorry that she got caught? And I think it's the latter.
I think most of the time people are mainly sorry that they got caught.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that.
The fact that she didn't show up to her court date shows me that. If this woman felt remorseful for what she did, she would have shown up to court and taken her just desserts and sat there and gotten her justice. But she didn't. So.
Did you say just desserts?
Just desserts.
Is that a thing?
It is.
Okay. Is it really a thing, or did it just...
Yes.
Is that the thing you guys say, just desserts, like justice?
I don't know what it means, but it means something.
Just desserts. Didn't show up and get her just desserts.
I'm going to look it up now. Get one's just desserts. Receive the appropriate reward, or more usually, punishment for one's actions.
Ah.
Yeah, don't even put me on Jeopardy, okay? All right, so Denali, Caden, and Caleb, and we haven't really talked about Caleb in this part, so he was the one who actually gave them his truck so that they could go and lure Cece out into, like, the woods and kill her. They've actually been charged with murder, but the discovery hearing has been postponed twice, and, evidently there's a lot more that we don't know about, because as we spoke about at the end of the last part 1, on Tuesday, January 29th, 2020, prosecutors handed 56 gigabytes of material to the defense team, and the assistant DA, his name's Patrick McKay, he told the judge that if it was all printed out, it would be over 100,000 pages, and there were 60,000 pages of information from just one cell phone extraction alone. Both Darren Miller and Denali Bremer have been indicted on federal child pornography and child exploitation charges. As you had mentioned, after Cece's death, Denali and Darren were planning another murder, and the only thing that put a stop to that was the fact that she was arrested, and then he was arrested. So these 2 individuals would have gone on, I truly 100 million% believe they would have gone on to do this to somebody else, especially if they hadn't got caught for what happened to Cece. Yeah,
we said that in the last episode. Remember that? And I 100% agree with you that if they hadn't been caught, this would have been something that Darren would have had her carrying out on a consistent basis. And based on her responses, she was completely okay with that.
She would have done it, yeah.
Yes, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
And there's some video footage on YouTube of Denali in court. And when you see Denali in court, she appears to be completely emotionless. She made a statement that she knew what she had done was wrong, and she knows she could have probably done something different. Oh, this statement really pisses me off, by the way, because it's such a cop-out. Not, I did something wrong, and given the opportunity, I would never do that again. I probably would have done. She can't even say 100% that she would not do it again. Probably would have done something different, like maybe 75%, but there's still a 25% chance that I would have done the exact same thing. I mean, at least she can be honest with herself and with us, right? She also makes reference to her own child. And before this week, when I was looking back into this case, because I talked about it a year ago, I'd never even heard that she had a child. So I don't know what's going on with that. It's very hush-hush. I can't really find anything about it. But Denali's 2 older sisters spoke to the local media, and they shed some light on Denali's childhood. So apparently she's the 3rd child out of 5 girls. And at one point or another, all 5 of these children had been removed from their mother's care. But the abuse came to a tipping point when the man living with their mother at the time killed their 2-month-old baby sister, Gabriella, according to AlaskanNewsSource.com. So Denali was adopted by her family that she's, currently with. She was adopted at a very young age, but her sisters believe that she was affected by this trauma from her, her early years. Brenna Martinez, Denali's middle sister, said, quote, "We all had really hard lives, and I feel like she took the wrong road with the wrong people who didn't care about her, and now she's paying the ultimate cost," end quote. And as empathetic as I am, because if we're talking about child Denali, I have empathy. I don't want to ever see any child in a home where they're being abused or neglected or made to feel like crap about themselves. This is literally how horrible people are made. It starts with parenting. It starts with your childhood. Are you treated with love, with respect, with kindness? Are your, basic needs fulfilled? You're going to turn into a decent person. Maybe not all the time, but normally, 98% of the time, you're going to probably turn out to be a decent person. But if you're abused, if you're neglected, if you're told, you can't do anything right, you suck, yeah, you're going to grow up with some problems. But as empathetic as I am of that, I do have to disagree with Denali's sister Brenna on this one, because it was actually Cece. Cece paid the ultimate cost. Cece paid with her life for something that she didn't even do. Denali's childhood had nothing to do with Cece. Cece didn't do these things to Denali. Cece had no part of it. So Denali did not pay the ultimate price. Cece did. Overall, I think we're here. We've been here. I've told you, I just cannot find it in me to feel sympathy for Denali. I mean, even her sisters agreed that Denali's adopted family, or her adoptive family, they gave her the opportunity to break this cycle. But she still chose to do this to someone who trusted her, someone who considered Denali to be her best friend. It's not as if Tyler or Darren or Baby or whoever he was or whatever she called him, it's not as if he was standing next to her with a gun to her head, right? She had every opportunity to put down her phone, walk away from his bananas requests. But from what I've read in her text messages to him, right, Denali was actually enjoying the activities that he was making her do. And before she took part in Cece's murder, she could have gone to the police. She could have explained that things started out innocently enough, and then they escalated. And she just didn't want to have anything to do with it at this point. She's like, oh, I talked to this guy, and then he started making crazy requests. She could have turned him in, but she didn't, right? And I don't care. I don't care if someone offers you $9 or $90 million. If you make a deal to murder someone else for any amount of money, you just are not a good person. Some things are very black and white in life. There's a lot of gray areas in life, but some things are very, very black and white. You're not a good person if you make a deal to take another life for money or for any other reason.
Yeah, and we have to keep in mind that Darren, as bad as he is, and he's the bottom of the barrel, and we've said it numerous times, Denali was in a different state with no one around her physically forcing her to do any of this. These were conscious decisions that she made on her own for someone she had never met. So she had an excuse for doing it, but at the end of the day, she was the one who carried out the murder, right? And again, we haven't talked a ton about Caleb or Caden, and we know that Caden is the one who shot Cece.
There's so little known about him out there. There's just not anything out there about him. Right,
but again, he shot her, but Denali brought the gun. And so,
I'm not saying Caden's a good person. I'm not saying Caden is like, innocent of this.
Right.
But
no,
would
exactly.
Would Caden have shot Cece if Denali hadn't told him to? Would Denali have shot Cece if Tyler, aka Darren, didn't tell her to? This is a sort of symbiotic relationship. Like, none of these people, I don't know if any of these people would have gone on to do anything wrong if they hadn't been telling each other to do all these horrible things. It's sort of a, you feel safe in the crowd. Like, these other people are along for the ride. So I'm almost safe. I'm shrouded in this obscurity. I'm just part of a crowd. I'm part of this hive mind. This isn't me doing this. It's me doing this with a group of people. Therefore, I'm not as culpable. I'm only, 20% culpable. I think that there's this diffusion of responsibility that happens when you get into a crowd mentality.
Yeah, and they're all spoiler alert, they're all equally guilty and culpable. There is no
Bingo.
diffusion. So it's one of those things where, we're talking about specifically Denali here just because of, what her sister said and as far as her background. And I know some out there might go, oh my God, that's terrible that she grew up like that. But I know people, and I'm sure you do, where, I know individuals who have been involved in horrific upbringings, worse than Denali's, and turn out to be incredible individuals, if anything better individuals than most, because of what they've experienced and they realize how precious life is and how important it is to be a good contributing member of society. And some people go the opposite route. Clearly Denali chose the other way.
I absolutely agree with you, and I always use this sort of comparison. If you are a kid and you have like a parent, right? And it's a bad parent, not necessarily abusive, but just, maybe authoritarian, maybe abusive. You at one point are going to go on to either be exactly like that and continue the cycle of abuse, or you're going to go on to be the opposite, because you know how terrible it was growing up with a parent like that, and you don't want to subject anybody else to that. But in the end, which path you choose, I 100% believe is your choice. It's not ingrained in your DNA. It's not like, well, I had a shitty parent, so I'm going to grow up to be a shitty parent. If you have that sort of defeatist attitude, then don't have kids. But in the end, the choice was made for Denali by Denali, right? She could have said, oh, yes, I can follow my impulse and I can, do this, but I recognize that there's a darkness in me and I don't want to embrace that. She chose to embrace that darkness. She saw the fork in the road and she went, I don't know, left, right? I don't know which way. She took the bad path, Derek. And the worst part, not the worst part, but one of the worst parts. After Denali had stolen Cece from her family and from the world, Denali proceeded to rub salt in the wound. And she was texting Cece's father, Timothy Hoffman, about how much she loved Cece and how worried she was. And, oh, I know she's going to come home soon. And, I love her. I hope she comes home soon. Like, this is awful. You have to be a truly soulless person to do that. This tells me specifically that she did not feel bad. She was more concerned about being caught. So she's going to do everything she can to cover her ass and, portray and demonstrate this, worried friend, as if she wasn't standing right there when Timothy Hoffman's daughter, who was so precious to him, so cherished by him, was shot in the head. Denali stood there and videotaped it. And then she has the balls to text this man and say, oh, I love her so much and I'm so worried. Oh, it just makes me sick. It makes me sick. And it did bother me because the articles about this case kept saying she was catfished, as if this somehow makes it better or makes it less bad, at least. We've talked about this, but I don't know. What are your final thoughts?
Well, before I get into my final thoughts, what I would like to do is I was able to find a video from Timothy Hoffman online, and it's from, I believe it's from the court after Darren's first appearance. It's the first time that Timothy got to see Darren in court, and this reporter interviewed him, and I just have a lot of respect for him after watching the interview. And for people who are listening in on audio, you'll only hear the audio, but if you're watching on YouTube, you'll get to see the video. So we can play it now and then we can talk about that, because I think he actually he rounds it out very nicely as far as what has to take place from this point forward, where he's at right now, and how he's going to let the court system ultimately decide what happens to the individuals responsible for his daughter's death, even though you can tell by listening to him, he's having some thoughts that I'm sure have crossed all of our minds at one point or another while listening or watching this. So we'll play it now and you guys can check it out and we'll weigh in on it.
What was it like seeing him in court today?
I've been waiting for a long time. And I'm ready. What's it like? It's going to be a bunch of rounds from now until it's over. But I won't miss one.
When he walked in, he was emotional. He was wiping tears away. What did you think about that?
I didn't see him walk in. But I have to hold back my emotions to show no emotions to support my family. At this time, I do not care about his. I'm out for one thing and one thing only, and that's justice. And that's to make them rot in jail where all them people could send them to hell.
I was going to ask for you, not just with him, but with all the suspects, what does justice look like for you?
I'm going for the full 99 years. But I ain't going to stop coming until everybody hears my cry. It won't be an emotional one. It'll be one that the good Lord will be on my side. And it's already nationwide. And I'm sure there's a lot of people on my side. In that case, the judge has to hear it.
He's one of 6 individuals accused of having some role in your daughter's death. Do you feel any differently about any of the 6?
No, I think they all ought to cry, even the teenagers. To make a decision they made, to make the plot they plotted, to plan out my daughter's death. That's not being a teenager. That's being an adult. They all ought to be tried as one. They all ought to stay in these courts, put the age aside, and give them what they rightly deserve. I hear one of them wants to play a victim, but they're not victims. They planned all this. A few of them even came to my house. To come into my house as friends for my daughter and to do what they did to her, I am backing off of this.
He was never in Alaska until now. Do you feel that he's just as responsible?
Yes, I feel that he's just as responsible as everybody else. They made a plot at it up here, but he offered the $9 million. He offered the means to have it done. Even though he didn't have the money to back it all up, he still are the ones that coached all them people to do what they did. To them, it was about money, some about jealousy, but to Shield Miller, it was about being a pervert.
How's your family doing?
My wife don't come out of the house much. It's hard to get a smile on her face. My daughter stays up late at night all the time. I have to tell her when it's time to go to bed, even though she's an adult. I've told everybody together, and then myself, I work 12 hours a day to keep it out of my mind, but it never leaves it.
You very much kept your composure in the courtroom today. How did you prepare yourself for that?
When they made the statement about the first-degree murders and all them other ones, I wanted to stand up and tell the judge that was my daughter. But this case is about child pornography, and so until I have the right to stand up and say something, I'll keep my calm.
Do you plan to speak Friday at his hearing in state court?
I will be there Friday. On Friday, I'm going to bring something where he can see on first hand what he did to my family. But everybody will know that on Friday.
Near the end of this hearing, the witness that you maybe were starting to want to say something to the judge. I might have interpreted that wrong. Was there something that you wanted to say?
Well, like I said, when they came up with the murder on the state to keep them in detention, I wanted to stand up in front of all them people and tell them that was my daughter that got murdered. This guy changed my entire life. He destroyed a lot, and now I gotta fix it and mend it and sew it together. I have to keep my family strong and make things go right.
Do you have any sort of indication from the attorneys where they're at in the process with figuring out if the other defendants will be moved to adult court?
Not yet. I read on Channel 11 that they ought to let Mr. Hoffman be put in a room for 30 minutes with him. And that'd been nice. But I'll still go with my faith, not revenge. I'll let justice do his job.
How hard is that, though?
Very.
The process is slow.
It's very hard for me. Back in the day, I would have probably flew down there and brought him up myself. Willingly or unwillingly. Nowadays, I'm a parent. I'm responsible. I'm all about my children, and it's all about family. And that's the only thing I stand up for.
Okay, so I'll start. I'm a big fan of Timothy Hoffman, and not because of what he's gone through, but just how calm and collected and composed. And I mean, this is just my take on it. You can tell Timothy was a badass, or is a badass, and he probably had some things he wanted to say, but the way he spoke, he's a great speaker, and he was the way he looked him in the eye and what he had to say, it was just really well. It's really well said, and he said a lot of things that I want to repeat. But the first thing he said was, I've been waiting for this a long time, and I'm ready. I'm ready. So he was prepared for this day, and a lot of respect for him, because some of the things he said near the end, as far as I wish I had 30 minutes in a room with him. That'd be nice. But I'm gonna let my faith. I'm gonna rely on my faith and let justice do its job. Credit to him, because I can honestly sit here with you and tell you that if it were my daughter, I don't know if I would have that in me. I guess you'd have to be in that situation to know, but I don't think I'd have the courage to handle it like he is. Even with everything I've been through in my life, if it was my daughter, I don't know if I'd be able to do what he's doing or speak the way he so eloquently spoke about it.
Yeah, Timothy Hoffman. I give him a lot of respect. I don't. Like you, I don't think I could have kept my composure. And they mentioned that he was very cool and collected during court. I don't think I could be, but I guess we probably would be in that situation, because we would have to be, right? You want to be taken seriously. You want the trial and the whole situation to be about Cynthia, so you don't want to be making a scene, but every cell in his body was probably screaming out to make a scene, was probably screaming out to just stand up and, just lose it on these people. And, some of the things he said, they're not victims. 100% agree. He said a few of them came to his house. Oh my God. Can you imagine that you opened your home to these people who went on to plan your daughter's murder? This family is destroyed. His wife doesn't want to leave the house. His daughter can't sleep. This family's destroyed, and as any family would be. And he says, I don't care about Darren's emotion, because the reporter's like, he was really emotional, tears were streaming down his face. Who the hell cares? I don't care about Darren and his demonstrative performative tears coming down his eyes. He's probably just really sad that he's going to be in prison and he won't have access to his child pornography anymore. That's what he's crying about. And then, he says something that's very moving to me. He says, I ain't going to stop coming till everybody hears my cry. And then he says, I'm sure there's a lot of people on my side. There are a lot of people on your side. I'm on your side. Derek's on your side. I hope everybody watching is on your side, because as much as we can admit that there was factors that caused these people to do what they did, we can also admit that those factors at this point are irrelevant, because there's tons of people who go through the same exact thing and do not go on to victimize others. And, you should not stop coming until everybody hears your cry and everybody knows the name Cynthia Hoffman, because she lost her life. She didn't do anything wrong except just want to have friends. And I don't think that's a crime.
Yeah. And so we'll be watching. I know I'll be watching. I know you'll be watching. I think everyone listening or watching this will be paying attention. April 28th. April 28th. It's right around the corner. We're about 12 days away, 10 days away from this. So it's coming up quickly, and hopefully after this discovery hearing, the trial will get underway and we'll start to get some answers as far as what the punishment will be. He said he's looking for the 99 years. 99. I think that's not enough, but that's the max. So that's what he's going
gracious.
For.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's going for the max. I mean, takeaways from this case, as you just said perfectly, Cece did nothing wrong. But I will read a quote that I found interesting, and it's from the U.S. Attorney in Alaska, Brian Schroeder. And he said, for all the good the internet can do, it can be a very dark place. And, you know, as we sit here looking back at this case and trying to take something away from it, you know, I'm putting on the helmet of, like, you know, I'm a parent now, right? And people out there may be looking at it differently depending on their life situation. But Cece was 19 at the time, and so she was technically an adult, but she was still living with her dad. And, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking an interest in what your kids are doing and having an open relationship where you keep an eye on who they're talking to online and who they're talking to on the phone and who they're around. And it's easy to see the best in people because you think they're young kids. Like, you know, this girl, I'm sure Denali and Caleb and Caden were coming around. I'm assuming that's who Timothy was alluding to, by the way, as far as a few of them came by my house, you know, came to my home. And so, you know, really take a vested interest in who your kids are hanging around with. And you may not always get it right. In fact, you may get it wrong a lot of the time. But I even do it now with Tenley, my older daughter, because it's like you just never know. And I'd rather be a little overbearing than complacent. And there is a fine line between it. I'm learning every day. But I really think all of us as parents have to take a vested interest into who our kids are communicating with online, because I'm talking about Cece right now, but I'm also talking about Denali. Again, let me reemphasize, Denali is not a victim at all, but she was communicating with this man in another state, I'm assuming over the phone, but also probably on a computer. And who was monitoring this? Who was keeping an eye on her?
Well,
I know she was an adult.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I'm assuming she wasn't living on her own. And again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Denali and her culpability. I'm just trying to find something that we can all look at and say, you can have a little bit more, you know, involvement. And it even goes more towards the 14 or 15-year-old that we were discussing, who was at this residence. Do we even know where they were at when this was occurring? When Denali was having the conversations with Darren and the 14-year-old, 15-year-old was there? We know she wasn't at her home.
Yeah, she had to go home by 2, so.
By 2, exactly. So
But she
was
probably
somewhere.
told her
Darren,
parents, like, I don't know if she told her parents she was hanging out with Denali. I doubt it, because I'm not going to let my 14, 15-year-old daughter hang out with, you know, somebody who's that much older than
you
her.
would think.
But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, even when my daughter was 14, 15, she'd bring friends over, and I would have no problem saying, listen, I think this girl's bad news. Okay, I don't mind snap judgments when it comes to my children. You know, I'd say this girl, she seems really mean. She seems like real catty. She talks shit about everybody. If she's talking shit about everybody, she's probably talking shit about you behind your back. This is what I would say. Okay, I'm not going to tell you don't hang out with this person, but I am going to shine a light on the negative qualities that this person has so that hopefully you will see them, right? But yes, I think Denali at this point, I believe she was obviously living with her mother still, but she's over the age of 18, right?
Yeah.
So what are you
But
going
was
to
she
do
paying
at that
for her own
point?
phone bill? I know. And again, you would know better than me because your daughter, how old's your oldest daughter?
19. She'll be 20 in October.
All right, so you should right there. And I mean, you guys have a very good relationship, so it's different. You know what I mean? But again, it's kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the episode, right? There's no perfect answer. There really isn't, you know, and we were talking about gun control and stuff that earlier, but in some situations, there's no perfect answer. All you can do is do the best you can. And for me, I would rather be a little bit more on the overbearing side and just try to be involved. So that way, God forbid something did happen, I could say, listen, I did the best I could without pushing her away or pushing Peyton away. You know, I don't want to lose them as that relationship, but I also want to protect them. And it's easy for them at their young age not to know that they need to be protected in some situations, even when they don't realize it. So that's where I'm coming from on it. That's the little bit of a takeaway. But at the end of the day, these were people who were allowed into it was the Trojan horse. They were allowed into their homes. They trusted them. The father clearly had a relationship where he could talk to, Denali. He trusted her to ask her where she was. And she's just she's a horrible human being. And she took advantage of a young girl who just wanted to have friends. And that's the bottom line to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry I went all Nancy Grace on you. I feel like it's not a super positive thing, okay? Because I know Nancy Grace, she does this where she just rants and like she seems like there's no wiggle room and it's just like, you're a bad person. And I know Nancy Grace seems like that. And I try to avoid that because there's a Nancy Grace inside of me. She's always trying to come out. But I try to keep her inside. So I'm sorry. But, once again, like once you see these every day and you dive deep into these cases and these affidavits and this just disgusting behavior, you start to just lose faith. You start to lose faith in the world and the people in the world. And it's sad, but it makes me realize, like, I think at this point I can tell the difference between somebody who's truly doing something because they're misguided and somebody who's doing something because they're just not a good person. That's just my opinion. You may disagree with me, but I think at this point I can tell. And there's just something screaming in me, in every cell of my body, that Denali Bremer, along with every single other person involved in that case, they're not good people. Because you could have approached a teenager who knew the difference between right and wrong, who didn't want to hurt anybody, and that person would have been like, nah, I'm out. And hopefully that kid would have told somebody, But you do have a personal responsibility. Whether you're 15, whether you're 50, you have a personal responsibility when somebody else's life is at stake. And don't forget it.
Mm-hmm. Now, well, thinking of the Hoffmans and as they go through this process, because now they're going to be going to trial. And I'm also thinking about the families of the victims, the names we don't know of the young teenagers that were sexually assaulted. As you mentioned, Darren and Denali are also facing child pornography charges as well. So there's in addition to the murder charges. So I'm hoping that they get hammered for that as well. And I know that those two young juveniles who were the victims in those situations, they're still here, but that's something that their family is gonna have to deal with as well. So
here's my question: do you think that one of these like, especially minor victim B, the 14 or 15-year-old, do you think it's the same one who was involved with what happened to Cece?
So the first time I watched Timothy, because I had watched Timothy's video before, and I was trying to piece when he said something quick about one of them pretending they were a victim.
Yeah.
Again, I'm right where you are, where I was like, if this girl was being manipulated, my experience would tell me that more than likely this girl that they're referring to in this situation is also the girl that is involved with Cece's death. Absolutely. I think it was a crew of people, and it probably is the same person that he's referring to. That's my guess. I feel like you agree.
I kind of do, and it just I'm defeated at this point. Like I don't even know who to feel sorry for anymore, and that's when you know it's bad.
It could be another juvenile.
Yeah.
It could be another juvenile that we haven't talked about yet. But yes,
no. Keep in mind, minor victim 1 was 8 or 9 years old. 8
right.
or 9 years old. Denali Bremer. 8 or 9 years old. Is she a good person? Nope.
No, I agree. But no, I to your point, and we may never know because of the way it works with juveniles. Yeah. If I had to take an educated guess, I would say the 14 or 15-year-old who was, having a sexual relationship with Denali, but also communicating directly with Darren, makes me think that that's probably the person he's referring to. Yes. Yeah, it's a tough one. This is a hard one. I'm glad we covered it again. I know you said you covered it before, and again, I'm going to be following it to see what happens. Now I'm invested in it, so we'll be thinking of the family and thoughts are with him, and we'll be back next week, right?
Yeah, back next week. Thank you guys so much for being here. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Leave us a message on SpeakPipe. All you have to do is go to crimeweeklypodcast.com and check out our website. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Have a good night.